Hey, so I feel like when I just really realized that the cat doesn't want to go back in the bag. This pussy's here to stay. And I feel like I remember when I came home from Orsamech. And there's so many parallels to the religious Jewish journey and becoming trans. And we knew it at the time. We would actively talk about it in the yeshiva. And and so we so when I got And so when I got home from yeshiva and I wouldn't take off my kippah, this big blue kippah, and I'm in my kitchen in deal, and my dad just looks over at me and he goes, "You're not gonna take that off, are you?" Oh man, no, no, Dad, no. This is me now. Deal with it. I'm here. I'm I'm Yid and I'm proud. I am ugly and I'm brown. I'm ugly and I'm proud. I was just talking about how it can feel so strange to find my initial voice once you start playing with different types of vocal presentations, because I realized that a lot of it is a play, and obviously like there's something that comes natural, but and there's some tendencies that are like quote unquote natural biological to that, and also yet like it's normalized by those around me, like the same way my accent shifted away from a New York accent. And it could be correctly argued that my shift away from the New York accent is being is a form of my erasure of my ethno self in not a positive way, where I am basically feeding into racist tropes that having an accent means you're stupid. That I'm some kind of Italian or Jew who's lower in social value because I realize I play into that when I do some of my mimicry of the abuse I received, because it was typically in accents that sounded like that, and I am conscious of it, and not all the time. Obviously, I don't know if I'm gonna stop doing it. I'm just naming that it exists in the air right now. One of the reasons I guess I wouldn't stop is that it's really therapeutic for me to be able to mimic those voices in the way that was received, and just it's a way to just for me to take ownership, and I realize at the same time that it can be also feeding discriminatory practices, and even hurting, actively hurting people, and that's something I think about, and I guess I'm weighing that. It doesn't. I guess my hesitation around it, or I guess some of what doesn't feel so bad for me, is that it doesn't feel like a class that's just sitting there and like, oh, woe is me. Like, I don't know if the Italian and Jewish accented populations of New York are really ones that are actively today being, you know, I don't know. I just let me pull out the world saddest violin for them. In terms of the list of communities, like it certainly exists, this like elitist accent hunting. I just watched a video on a woman who putting on her natural southern accent and putting it off, and how she could do that, and it's really it's a nuanced conversation. Obviously, if I met someone right now with that accent who had something to say, we could have a conversation about it, and maybe I'd be more compassionate about it. There's a little voice in my head that's saying I'm not being compassionate enough, and I hear it. I It's just so damn therapeutic to do. And it's something I want to let go of. I guess I could do it in private, in that sense, like to do it publicly is part of that too. And I guess that's something I can be conscious of. I want to free others too, though, because they've heard abuse in the same voices. They know exactly what I'm talking about. When I put that on, it can be specific people in my life, but it's also specific people in your life, and that mimicry was just so targeted and so painful. It's just sending the bullet right back where it came from, girl. And right, and so even like I remember I was talking. Oh my God! See, for a second when I like the girl, like was that a black scent? Was I just doing black scent? Like I don't know. I don't know, and I know that's something that is problematic. People have I watched a short video on just the offensiveness of blacks, and basically for those that are unaware. See, I could feel myself slipping. Oh my God, when I was about to go into psych doctor mode, I can feel myself even slipping out of my trance voice that I'm doing right now. And wow. And so yeah, it's this concept where you basically I guess trying to fit in or sound cool, and you put on that stereotypical what you think of a black accent would sound like, in a playful way, but it's so associated with harmful stereotypes, and can just sound so off-putting and so fake, and especially if you're not from that race or of that people, and yeah, so I don't want to participate in that. And I remember I was talking to very early in my coming out journey. I want to pinpoint exactly where this was. I want to say I met a person. Anyway, so this person I met basically was we were in a conversation, and she basically was like, I'm like, I feel like I've always wanted to be a woman, and I'm identifying as trans and gender fluid, and she just she's a woman, and she says to me, don't you think trans people are just like doing blackface, like about women? And this was not like this kind of turf bullshit. It's not the first time I heard. I received in a lot of conversations with women. I guess they felt more permission because I was so male presenting, and it's so early in my journey, and just so open to conversation, and just so used to right wing talking points. Like, I have a way of making people feel comfortable like that around me, and I appreciate authenticity, and I'm one to be happy to go into a discussion. At the same time, like, it's I don't I remember I watched someone say, hey, going by they, them, and the person they said it to said, oh, who cares? They, them, she, it, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, oh my God, that lady just totally, not only did she miss the point, like, she was deeply insulted. Like, if I'm going out of my way to tell you my pronouns, like, clearly I'm saying that this is important to me, and this is important for how you relate to me, and it's something that's meaningful for me. You're not, and then you're coming in and saying, who cares? Like, I'm literally telling you, I care. I'm literally right here telling you, I care. And I watched this happen to this person, and I watched, see, I almost misgendered them. And so I watched this happen to this person, and they just didn't respond. They didn't feel, and I went up to them after, and I'm like, hey, you didn't feel this need to debate, or? And she's like, no. See, I did. I'm trying. I do it. And they were just like, no, I don't feel I pick my battles, and I have a lot of respect for that. Learning that one. Right now, I'm in, I don't know, now, I've always been the type of person who doesn't, who when I feel uncomfortable, I'm gonna let someone know. I'm just gonna let someone know that I disagree with them. Unless I'm like physically feeling unsafe, like I am here, I'm queer, and I'm ready to, let's go. You want, and so this woman tells me I'm doing blackface. Some other woman was like, you don't know what you're doing to your body, and I felt in that conversation that woman wanted to fuck the trans out of me. She was like, you are a beautiful man, like you are such a sexy man. And I'm like, oh my God. Is this woman too much of a bigot for me to have sex with her? Ultimately, I leaned in that direction. Can you imagine what a development in my life I've oh yeah, where women's political opinions made me not want to get in her pants. This is growth. and so I want to get back to if this is going to be like ever posted. Now I'm like getting scared. Oh my God, it's going to be posted. if this ever posted, like get back into maybe a style of just free speaking. I think free speaking is fun and things come up, and I'm having a funner time doing it, and maybe you guys will have a funner time listening to it. And yeah, I think authenticity is important, and I want to model that, and I've talked a lot about it, but I think the earlier episodes were more reflective of that in terms of like the here and now, like being brave enough to just speak and let what comes out, as opposed to the scripted episodes. Not to say the scripted ones weren't very important, and it's much easier to read from a script with the heavier stuff, the big episodes. And so I still want to do the scripts for. I have episodes that I want to do about my trauma experience and training to be a psychologist, and I have scripts for, or I mean, I'm going to work on basically scripts for that, and I want to work on scripts for my final 5 episodes of the uh of the season 1. Basically, that's the direction. So there'll be 2 more phases. This one phase will be basically just focused on my training trauma experience. Another, I guess, history based, my history, personal history, autobiography type of phase. But I guess different than the last one. It's not targeted to my relationships with people, more so my relationships with power and a system of power, and a very painful one at that, and just my experience throughout the doctorate program, the 5 years there, and really the traumatizing experience that was. While I'm going to not, it's going to focus a lot on the program itself and my experiences in that, and my experiences in the training, around that, and also though I'll certainly shed light on, it's just so intimately tied with my time in the program, with my time in what I've described, and what I'm coming to really know what was basically the conversion therapy that I was in, and consenting to, quote unquote consenting. The more and more I look back at it, the more and more it's just tragic to me that at 24 years old I came out to a therapist, and that therapist never once entertained with me the idea that becoming a woman was an option. Not even, sorry, let me rephrase that. That the fact that I was a woman was an option. And that actively working towards that can actually feel really, really relieving, and really, really healing and freeing, and alleviate a lot of the other problems that are going on. They don't all go away. I don't think my training trauma was related to my conversion therapy for the most part. I do think that a lot of my struggles during that time were connected. It's hard to parse out what. Also hard to understand, my approach to the religion and my whole journey through that, without understanding it with this transgender reality in the frame of all of it. And I realized that it felt really good, and it was something I was exploring in philosophically for a long time, and also was very motivated by the relief that it brought, certain feelings of discomfort inside that a good therapist could have easily named as enmeshed dynamics, as internalized guilt and shame. Like, I had a therapist, I've mentioned her already, that I saw for 3 sessions when in 2017, when I was in my senior year of Babson, who basically, after I was debating whether or not I wanted to go into the field of psychology and to go into therapy, and within 3 sessions, she just looked at me and said, "It sounds like you really do want to go into the field of therapy. What it also sounds like is that you've internalized a lot of doubt that is not your own." And I was just floored. I spent the first, she asked me about my relationships with my family in the first session, I remember. And I spent the first session, like, literally just telling her how great all my relationships with my family were. Because that's how I felt at the time. That all my relationships with my family were great. I had nothing else to say about them, like other than how nice they were, and how I would say like my dad used to yell, but he's really sweet now. And if I said that, I don't even know if I would even acknowledge that that was a painful experience for me. And my mom's been there for me. She, I love my brother and my sisters, and I think I even mentioned my housekeeper, and so looking at this, I go, I just whoa, aw, and and that she just picked up for me and was able to deliver it in such a delicate way to such an early version of me is devastating to think about. For you can say, oh, you weren't ready to explore your transness. Well, I came out to my therapist. Like, that's pretty ready to at least talk about it. Not to that there. I came out to my therapist 2 years later. A different, completely different lady, religious lady. This other therapist was, connected to my college, completely secular. And so we'll say Babson therapist and conversion therapist. We'll separate the two like that. And I guess I use the word conversion therapy. I think a more appropriate word would be gender exploration therapy. The word conversion therapy, though, is not completely inappropriate. There were religious themes involved in the entire process. But gender exploration, I watched videos of it, and it wasn't exactly that either, but it's closer. It's closer to what we're talking about. You guys can look it up for yourself. It's not as sweet as it sounds. It's pretty fucked up. And you might be saying to yourself, like, what is all this? Like, this is too much for me. Like, and I totally hear that. Like, it was too much for me. But basically, like, after that third session with that Babson therapist, I had told her in one of the sessions, like, I have this mentor lady that I've had my whole life, and there are things I don't tell her. I think I said it in like a, kind of hinting. And so I said, there's other stuff I don't talk about. And so she calls me after the third session where we had, basically resolved my conflict in 3 sessions about whether or not I wanted to be a therapist. And I was, I got my answer and didn't need to come back. And she said, look, you got your answer. You don't need to come back, but you have 7 more free sessions provided by the school. And if you want to use them, you're welcome to come here and talk about that other stuff if you'd like. If you're free, either way. Either way, it's been a pleasure to work for you. What a sweet little invitation. And I thought about it, and I said, I got enough on my plate right now. I didn't go. And part of me is like, fuck. Like, the me with the time machine. Like you just want to go back and change one. Like if you could change a moment, if you could, like Mo, go, go, go. What are you doing? Like, how many sessions would it have taken? 1. I'm transgender. Oh wow, that's so brave to share. Thank you. I've just been holding this for so long. Or I'm sorry. How I would have said it then. I feel like I wanted to be a woman my whole life. Wow, that can feel like so much to share. Yeah, I've been holding this for so long. Thank you. And we just would have cried for a bit, and maybe, she would have looked at me and said, like, have you ever considered, the idea that you are a woman? Something like that. And I would have answered, like, what? What do you mean? I'm a man. And she could have said, like, okay, what makes you feel like a man? And I went, well, you mean I was born with a penis? Okay. I'm curious if you can, and there's different ways to explore it. We don't have to, I guess, play out my whole fantasy of what actually, in a healthy way, exploring my gender identity would look like, with respect to all the ingrained beliefs and the risks that, not the risks, the sacrifices that it would take to actually, the quote unquote sacrifices that it would take to come out as trans. Do I think that if it's so interesting to like post facto look at this. I did this thing where I made, so I guess you could tell from the way I'm phasing, like I'm a Marvel fan, or at least was a bigger one, and the sacred timeline. Like I've put out my sacred timeline, with all these points in my life that were basically the ones that happened in this timeline, which even though it feels like I'm on a whole new, you know, I'm on a whole new timeline, a different universe, different cinematic universe right now, but it's connected to the other one too, and right. So the sacred timeline, and I just wrote out like key points that happened since 2019, since I came. I want to say since I came out, since I got into the doctorate program. No, I think the initial thing I wrote about was going to Asia Torah. I attended Asia Torah for a 2 week, 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on. So 2 out of 3 weeks in summer of 2019, and it was life changing. I was totally ached. I was inspired. Asia Torah, for those that don't know, is a religious education center that's on the Western Wall. It is part of the network of religious outreach centers known as the Kiruv organization, and basically they help Jewish people become, more Jewish. More sorry, well they might. I don't know if they'll say it like that, but they help. They bring people to insights about Judaism and discuss Judaism in a logical way. It's a place where high level ideas are openly talked about. It's also a place where it can be explored in a fun way, and it certainly showed me phases of Judaism that I had never seen before. And I was in a Jewish school for 12 years, and it was fun. I mean, I saw this rabbi who sat on his desk, Dov Ber Cohen, and he. Oh my God, it's so funny to say this story in this voice. I've said this story 1,000 times. When I was in the Shar, the Shar was the other religious place that was making me ultra orthodox, and that was helping me become ultra orthodox. Making me is a stronger word, and so the Shar happens to be one of the only places that conversion therapists didn't happen to recommend. But don't worry, it was met through a person at a place that the conversion therapist recommended. See, she wasn't recommending me, queer spaces to explore my gender in a safe and healthy way. She was recommending me ultra-Orthodox outreach centers that are primed to take advantage of my curiosity and vulnerability. And she was sending a vulnerable person there. Knowingly. Happily. And there's important conversations to be had around, faith-based therapy and what faith-based therapy looks like and how we could respect people, where people come from and how people practice. This is where, I get a little, I'm not interested in legality, but in terms of, the criminal nature of what went down, just so I could understand the levels of abuse, and just also so we could have a fluid conversation about it, just openly about the responsibility of the therapist in that role. And this was private therapy also. She even was careful about the way we worded it. This could have been coaching. It was paid in cash, and the sessions didn't even look like traditional therapy sessions. But this was a person, as far as I know, that has therapy licensure and degrees and training, and certainly was using therapeutic techniques with me in the context of, I want to do therapy with you. Okay, we're doing therapy now. I think that holds a lot of weight, and I think that's really just important to consider that was happening. And so in all in context, and it's really sad. It's really sad, and it's hard to talk about. I idolize this person. I love this person. And in many ways at the time, this person was quote unquote saving my life. At least that's what I would have said. I really did feel like, certainly on a soul level, my neshama in terms of when I was practicing Judaism. It felt like she saved my neshama. And beyond that, she was a person who was with me through a lot of trials and turbulent times in my life. I mean, we spoke on the phone every week certainly from when I was 16, when she moved to Israel, till I was 29, and even before I was 16, when she was before I was 16, when she was in person in America, and I went there every week from when I was 3 years old, basically, more or less. So this is a person who every single week was in my life. Like, that is a major human being, a role to play. And again, there's a system of violence that I experienced, a system of violence that I experienced, that this woman is not the sole shareholder of responsibility of that system of violence. There's no trans representation in the Syrian Jewish community. There's no discussion of trans thoughts, of even the acceptance of trans thoughts as normal, even just to come up. At the very least, in that therapy space, I was allowed to talk about transness, in the sense that I talked about that I had the feelings, and they were somewhat normalized. Yes, they were pathologized too, but at the very least, they were in the air. We could talk about them, and I could talk about having them. She thought they were escapist, and that, as long as I focused on the other parts of me, that it would fade into the background, or could be played out in fetish ways, and it's so problematic on so many levels, but it's at least more space than I had at home. And that's not to say my parents were intentional bigots. I don't think any of this is happening intentionally, but certainly it's happening. Let's be clear, it's happening. That there are trans girls and trans boys in these homes. With certainty, there are trans boys and trans girls in these homes who just can't come out. They can't express what they're feeling. Hell, I am learning every day just how universal my experience was, to the point where I can't even imagine that I lived in the modern world. I was reading Abby Stein's story. Abby Stein, first Hasidic trans woman. Wow. That's open. You have to keep saying that's open. I'm the first Syrian Jewish trans person that's open that I know of. There may be another person. If you're out there, I'm so sorry that I am not acknowledging your being. Thank you for existing. But yes, so if you're a person even who's open before me, I am not connected enough. I am not around enough. There may be someone else doing this, and I don't want to steal your thunder. And it's just like, God bless your soul, if we believe in the soul. And so, anyway, back to the context. Abby Stein, I'm reading her story, and the first thing she did when she got internet access, mentioned she's from a Hasidic community, she didn't even have internet access. They're that from. Like, I talked about, like, the gay and the ideology that I got sucked into. I was never that from. They were that from. They did not have the internet. This lady had yichus from the Baal Shem Tov. Like, this is a very Hasidic, very from family. And and Abby, God bless her, she first off, I'm reading her article, and like the prayer she wrote to God, she wrote this prayer to God, and she talks about it from like 9 years old, and she says in it, where I told God that if I could wake up a woman tomorrow, I promise I'll be the frommest woman, I'll wear skirts, I'll be modest, I'll do everything you want, I'll do all the mitzvahs, and I'm crying because I did that. I know I did that. I did exactly that. I said those were words I said to God. And to just read it, that someone else had that experience, and you're gonna say, oh my God, it's the poison in the media. Abby Stein had no access to media. Me and Abby Stein the only thing that related us were that we were growing up in the same Brooklyn. Are you gonna say it was in the water? It's in the water. It's making the frogs gay. Oh. This has been around. It's been around for as long as history's been around. People with things inside of them, urging them to explore the beyond the gender binary that we've created socially. She happened to find Kabbalistic insights from the 16th century about people being born with and having past lives with female souls and being born in a male body now, and what that and that helped her, and if that helps you, I don't need. It can be helpful, but for me, I don't need religious text to justify my existence. I know what I'm experiencing. And more I come to terms with it, is the more I find a wonderful woman inside of me that's just been waiting to come out her entire life. Hmm. And she's so happy to be here. And she's so happy to be here. And so like Abby Stein's story, she wrote that in 2020. I think it was April of 2020, like this article on the internet. Imagine she had no access to internet, and in the article she basically says that the first thing she did when she got an iPad and access to internet, and she hid in a bathroom stall, and it was her friend's tablet or whatever, and she googled in she doesn't mom she doesn't know English. She googles in Hebrew, she said. So it doesn't say the exact words. I imagine liot isha, like could a boy be a girl? Is basically what she googled, and I would love to ask her in person if I ever get to meet her. And oh my God, we have so much to talk about. And basically, wow, yay, go, yeah, go, you go, girl. And so the that's what she Googles, and she speaks Yiddish and Hebrew, and she finds a Google page with answers and people who left the ultra Orthodox community and became trans and were living a happy life. And it doesn't take her very long to get the fuck out of there and start doing that. And she was married and had a kid and lost access to her wife, and I believe I don't know about her access to her child. She talks about her child in very loving ways. I hope she has access to her child. God. And so yeah, and just being, disowned by her most of her family, and ouchie. And I'm reading this, and it's from April 2020. I'm someone who grew up with English speaking internet access, like in New York City. She was in New York City too, but she's in Chassid, New York City, and you could say I was in Syria, New York City, which is its own level of insularity. But I'm just the fact that that article was right there and I didn't find it, like God, fucking damn it. I don't know, like if I would have read something like that, would that have raised a flag in my brain and said, they call them. I'm learning terms now. They call it a trans egg. It's like before you know you're trans, you're like in an eggshell. And would that have cracked my egg a little bit? I'm trying to think. The first time I ever met a trans person in my life was in a taxi cab in Boston. As far as I know, obviously there are trans people who are not out. But the first time I met an openly trans woman was in a taxi cab in Boston, and the Uber and the Uber drivers. I asked a question. I said, I'm thinking about it myself. Well, did you do the sex change? It's the first thing I asked about, and the answer was horrific. I'm not going to repeat it. And I do realize that there's a lot of curiosity around the operations, and I do think that's a symptom of just our idea of what gender even is. Like, is gender just genitals? I don't think gender is genitals. I think there is so much more to gender than our genitals. And I don't need to check your genitals to know what gender you are. And it shouldn't be reliant on your genitals to define how you express that gender. You have a penis, so there's rules on what you have to express manlyhood and rules that you have to be man. Like, we clearly have alternative options right now. And clearly people experiencing deeply intense desires and wills and realities of not feeling in congruence with the gender they were assigned at birth, and desiring to express and explore that in different ways. And with all due respect to those experiencing, gay, lesbian, sexual, in terms of sexual desires, being shut down sexually is literally like some one of the worst things, like being forced into the levels of harm that can do. The levels of harm forcing someone into a gender that they don't fit into is in every minute of everyday experience. And it could be the same way for sexuality. I want to be very careful when I'm comparing two horrific things. But sex happens how many, like, it happens a lot. Forcing anyone into any non-consensual sex situations horrific. There's no gender's happening every moment of every day. Gender's happening. And so, oh wow. And so yeah, I I just I just I'm it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm still exploring a lot and trying to understand, what would have happened if I had heard at in 2019 or 2017 was when that was with the Babson therapist, like if I went in for session 4. What would it have looked like if instead of becoming religious, I had to explore my gender identity while living at home? My parents, specifically my mother, were horrific around my desires to become religious. Horrifically abusive. Horrifically abusive. I mean, one horrifically abusive. Emotional abuse is so bad. It was so bad. And so, would it have been better with gender? Part of me says it would have been harder to deny gender identity because of just like the current political atmosphere and the way we think about health and healing. And like if I brought them into one therapy session, like they do still respect some kind of therapeutic authority. Like they might even respect therapeutic authority more than rabbinic authority. And I wonder about that, about that, what that would have looked like if a therapist straight up told them like, hey, like this is for your child's healing. Like if they would have been able to say no as easily as they were able to say no to my desires to practice religion. At the same time, it's hard for me. I do know how difficult, at least initially, it was. It wasn't nearly as difficult, but to choose therapy, psychology, like, is choosing gender the same as choosing psychology? Is it even choosing gender? Is choosing to express my gender the same as choosing a different career path? Well, in a way, I was redefining what it meant to be a man in the Syrian community. Before me choosing psychology as a path, again, in my small insular part of the Syrian community, there was one man who I knew was a social worker, one man who I knew had a PsyD. That's it. Apparently, and I knew there was a Syrian man with a PsyD and a Syrian man with a social work degree. That was it. That was all I had. How many men were in the Syrian? 40,000? Adult men, 20,000? I don't know the numbers. That was my role models. Every man went into real estate, wholesale, finance, tech, business. Even in the beginning of the psychology journey, I had to promise it was business. That was totally a gender thing. If I was a woman saying I wanted to be go into therapy as a professional, like the pushback I would be getting was, well, make sure you still focus on your family. It would have totally been a gender pushback too. And how many women get to go for higher levels of degrees like that? How many women even get to go away to college in the Syrian community? And I'm talking like doctorates. Like I vividly remember like a woman who was certainly smart enough to go for a higher level degree and didn't just I think I really did feel at the time like it was just because she was a woman, like, and to focus more on family, like, and everyone can make their choices, but like that's so devastating in my heart, like that, what the fuck. And so what a privilege that I got to go. See, I definitely think that it's not an accident that this happened to me. Like that. Like, why am I the first? Why am I the first trans person to come out? And I just think that, well, how many other people got to go to 10 years of college? 11. at such a high level? How many people got to focus on therapy for that long? What a privilege. How many people interacted with the outside world that much? You could say like that was my curiosity, exploration, bravery. I'm also crazy enough to do it. Yeah, I could literally even point to I'm on the about 15-year anniversary of my open heart surgery. What an experience to have that kind of death salience, and I have a clean bill of health the rest of my life. Incredible. And yeah, you could look at it as like I had a disability and like this experience was a traumatic experience, and it was in some ways, and it's certainly worth exploring. But ultimately, like that heart surgery, like made me reflect on my life in ways that other people around me weren't. It made me realize at 15 just how short life was, that my valve wouldn't have lasted another 3 months had the procedures that we had not existed. And they existed for the past 50 years, so you can say that's a bit of an exaggeration to say that's like a near-death experience, but certainly it gave me death salience in a whole new way and changed the way I thought about life, and my life was not the same after. And so on one hand, I think like, God damn it, God fucking damn it, like I just wish I could have been transitioning from 11 years old from when, or 9 years old from when I knew, and 11 years old from, well, I started having BO at 9. I hit puberty at 9. Like, that was happening then. I was a young puberty. I finished growing, at least with height, at 14. So, like, for me, like, if I could have been on puberty blockers, like, that would have meant a lot to me. And if I could have just been open about my experience, I'm someone who abused alcohol. Like, do I want to say, like, I abused alcohol because of my transgenderism that I was covering up? Not necessarily. I think I abused alcohol more so in connection to my enmeshed abuse that was going on in my family system, and the complex dynamic of biopsychosocial factors. But certainly, it's not meant to be missed. See, it's so funny. We in my therapy, quote unquote, the conversion therapy, we used to, correlate like my escapist tendencies from a little kid, like that I would have a very vivid imagination and just picture portals in the classroom that I could go into when the class was boring the shit out of me, and then I all these fantasies, and eventually the fantasies basically blossomed into alcohol, diving deep into the fantasy of addiction and substance use and that escapism. And transgenderism was just like another form of escapism. Like I wanted to escape my body, like classic, right? And instead of like, it's so what the fuck, like what a minute, like that's how I fell for it. I have verbatim. I could show a paragraph. I'm not proud of it, but of my conceptualization of trans people from in 2021. That's 2 years into my doctorate program. That's 2 fucking years into my doctorate program, and it's horrific. It's basically equating. It's just what I just said, explaining, equating desires to my desires, or not mine. Wasn't ready to come out. Someone's desires to be another gender as an escapist type tendency, and what it miss. Escapism comes from when your gender doesn't match how you can express it. We miss the order there. They're not correlated with each other in that they're both symbols of escapism. One is coming from the other as a result of the other. We can't say it for certain. There are many factors. But what I am certain about is that my transgenderism is not an escape mechanism. My transgenderism is an authentic expression of my experience. And I know from the way I've experienced coming to terms with it. When I would submit to addictive tendencies, in the moment, for a second, it doesn't feel good. Consistently, it hurts the body. There's reactions to what it feels like to live in an escapist world, to be in an escapist cycle. It's helpful in certain ways and hurtful. The validation, the feeling of receiving warmth and validation, is a completely different bodily experience for me, and certainly I imagine for others. The feelings of feeding into my transgenderism has been extremely and eternally validating. It's like endless love and warmth. And that's not an injection of heroin that wears off. It's consistent and gets to be, and the more I express myself, the more I express myself in my authenticity, the more consistent it is. And the hit, and it keeps hitting. This is not an addiction. Addictions wear off. Addictions harm the body. I don't feel harmed at all. I feel free. I feel loved. Finally, I feel loved. For me, not for who I'm pretending to be. And so, like, yeah, I it's a lot, and yeah. So I look back and I wonder like what it would have been like, what it would have been like to transition throughout my doctoral program. You know, doctoral program had some support mechanisms for it. Certainly, I got to watch my first video about just like the gay experience, and somebody said something about like living in a shower of shame, or in a closet or a shower of shame, and I just like related to it. And I remember raising my hand and speaking from a deep place of just how much I related to it, and the presenter was almost perplexed. Like, why is this straight cis man like relating to this? And I'm like, girl, I'm a lesbian woman. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I remember how much I related to Lady Bird, the movie, and my professor just being like, "Wow, it's so interesting as a man you related to this," and I'm like, "Girl." Oh, it's been so nice to just listen to music that's just hitting my soul right now. Like I didn't even used to listen to female singers, and now like when I hear them, especially like lesbian female singers, it's just like there's like a part of my heart that goes it's just relaxed and at ease. It doesn't feel like see when I was religious, I was like restricting myself, so it would just be like, you know, this doesn't feel like restriction. This feels like the opposite. It just feels like allowance. It's really nice. I can listen to whatever I want. There's no music is music. It's just expression. Happens to be when I listen to a song and I go, I think I really like this. Creator's got to be gay, and creator's gay. It's like, do they have to be gay? No, but I go look and they are. Jacob Collier, guys. Jacob Collier's music is fucking fire. This guy bends genres, and it's fucking radical. And so, yeah, here I am. This is me, and this is what I'm exploring. I'm gonna keep going. I keep doing it. It's super interesting and super fun, and I hope it helps you. Thanks for listening. See ya, and have a magically delicious day.